Hello, I would like to tell you a little bit about possible software that you can use in order to execute SQL statements in Microsoft Access database. Uh, in Microsoft Access, you have a user interface for executing SQL statements, but it has a lot of problems and shortcomings. For instance, you cannot have comments in statements. You cannot execute a script, meaning multiple statements one after another. There is no code coloring in the interface. You do not see line numbers, and there is no checking of balance of brackets that you possibly have in the statements. But actually, all such functionality exists in programs that are meant for programmers for writing source code. And one such editor is Notepad++, and you can download Notepad++ freely. It's possible to extend Notepad++, and one person, one master student, who I supervised, or whose work I supervised, did that. He created a plugin for Notepad++ that allows its users to execute SQL statements directly in Microsoft Access database. And it also means that one can use all the functionality that Notepad++ provides, and all these things that make writing source code more comfortable. Moreover, this plugin has a functionality that allows you to check the executed SQL statement in terms of multiple different problems that can possibly exist in SQL statements. So this program also gives you feedback about possible problems that possibly can exist in the executed SQL statements. Now there is this GitHub repository that provides overview of this plugin. It provides installation guidelines. And in order to install it, first of all, you have to download and install Microsoft Access Database Engine 2010 redistributable that you can get from the internet freely. And then also you have to download a zip file. You find this zip file from here under releases. And here is the latest release at the time of making this video. I have downloaded this zip file, and if I unpack this zip file, when I see that it contains a couple of files with nppdb.com.dll, and then there is this folder plugins with a subfolder and some additional files. And in order to use this plugin, you have to copy this nppdb.com.dll to the folder that contains your Notepad++ installation. I have copied it here. And these plugin files you have to copy to a subfolder plugins. You see, I have here this folder nppdb with these files, just like I have these files here. So for installation, you have to copy, for installation, you have to copy these files to these folders. After you have done that, you are ready to use the program. And now I would like to make a small demonstration of using the program. So I open this file that contains statements that I want to execute. And here you can also see all kind of goodies or advantages that Notepad++ provides for program. So here I have comments with different colors. Here I have SQL statements where different parts of a statement have also different colors. So identifiers have one color, or keywords have one color, identifiers have another color, constants have been defined by using the third color, or presented by using the third color. Here, if I, let's say, click on this word select, I can see all the parts of this file that contain this word. Here I see line numbers. Here I can collapse and open the statement. And also there is this checking of a balance of brackets. So let's say I have here this create table statement. If I have this opening bracket here, I must have a closing bracket as well. But if I remove this closing bracket, when this opening bracket here is not nicely red, but it is sadly brown, and it gives me indication that the closing bracket here is missing. So all this functionality is built into Notepad++. It is not connected with this additional plugin. But the point is that you can write your SQL statements by using Notepad++. And then you can execute these statements directly in Microsoft Access database without having to copy these files to Microsoft Access. Also, by the way, here you have this kind of presentation of a code because the file that I opened, it has this extension SQL. So it gives to a program information that it is a SQL file. If I do not have such extension, then I can specify here in what language are the statements that are presented in this file. So I can select from here as well that these statements are SQL statements. Now I am ready to use this. I'm ready to use this program or this plugin. And what I have to do, I have to first of all define a connection. So if I go here, plugins in PPDB, then I have here this selection database connect manager, or I can use this shortcut key then. And the Database Connect Manager is opened here at the right side of a window. Here now I have to define a new connection. So connection type is with Microsoft Access database. Okay. I want to open connection to an existing database. And here I select the database. I select database. This database does not have a password, so I just click here, OK. And now I have here at the bottom of a window, I have this messages part where information about the results of executing the SQL statements will be displayed. Now, if I go here to the connection, and it has such a traditional tree-like presentation. So I can see tables and I can see views. Currently, there are no views, but there are some base tables. And if I double click on a base table, then I see columns of a base table, as well as I can see constraints that have been defined for a table, like primary key or unique or foreign key constraints. Now, if I want to execute the statement here, then I have to go to a statement. The statement has to end with this symbol in order to tell to the program that this is the end of a statement. And I can select from here plugins, nppdb, execute SQL, or I can use shortcut key F9. So if I click shortcut key F9, here I see the result of a query. And if I move my cursor here, then I actually see what is the actual statement that was executed. And I also here in this tab, I see point in time when this particular query that gave such results was executed. So I can execute here select statements. Now, one advantage of this program compared with the programs like the Beaver or the Schema that are universal database management tools for which you can also execute SQL statements against Access databases. One important advantage is that in a case of the Beaver and the Schema, you cannot execute create, alter, drop statements or select into statements against Access database. So you can only use you can only execute data manipulation language statements like select, insert, update, and delete, but you cannot execute create, alter, drop, and select into statements. This is different here because here you can also execute this data definition language statement. So if I execute this create view statement, then it actually creates a named select query in the database. If I look here on in the messages window, then I see the statement here, and the system tells me that the statement was executed successfully. And now if I look with Connection Manager and select from here refresh, then I see that here I have this view defined. By the way, I forgot to mention that here you can also make a simple query based on existing table for this graphical user interface. So if you just want to look the data that is in the table, then you can select from here, select top 100, and such query is executed, and the result is presented here. So this stop requires, in order to get meaningful results, stop requires also order by. Without this order by, essentially you will get 100 random rows from a table. But in case of, at least in case of my demo database, all the tables have less rows. So essentially I see all the rows from the tables. So in this way, I can also look data that is in tables without actually writing SQL statement by myself. Now I define here a view, and I can also make a query based on the view. So I execute a query based on the view, and the result is like that. And I can also drop a view. So drop statements can be also executed through this program or by using this solution. And here, if I select refresh, then I see that now this view has disappeared from this tree-like view. Now there are additional statements that I would like to execute. And next, I'm going to define a new connection, and I'm going to create a new database. So I define a new connection. I select create an empty database, and I create a database empty. No password here, and I have this new connection, this new window, and this connection has been connected with this window. Now I copy and paste these statements here. And actually, as you can see, if I select from here language SQL, then I tell to the system that the statements that are in this window, these SQL statements, and now the code has been colored accordingly. Now I have here two create table statements, and first of all I want to show you that I can select more than one statement, and if I press F9, then actually these statements are executed one after another. So essentially I executed the script. First of all, this create table occupation and then create table work. So I want to remind you that if you use Access, graphical user interface of Access, then in the graphical user interface of Access, you can only execute one statement at a time. So you cannot execute multiple statements one after another by using this default Access graphical user interface. Now here I define a foreign key constraint. Again, execution succeeds. If I execute it secondly, then the second execution fails because constraint with such name already exists in the database, and I will get an error in this case. Now, in order to demonstrate to you that I can also execute statements that manipulate data in the database, now I execute some insert statements. So I insert a row to the table occupation. You can see it succeeds. And I execute the second statement, and it succeeds as well. If I execute this second statement second time, then I will get an error because my data modification violates actually constraint that has been defined in the database. Now I see here that I have written this name of his occupation incorrectly. So create occupation, set name equals content, where occupation code equals 2. So I execute this statement in order to fix this mistake that I have made here in this insert statement. And as you can see, the execution succeeded. Now, if I execute this select statement here, then I will get a result that there is indeed one occupation where the salary is bigger than 2,200. If I execute this statement here, then I will get an error because there is no such column in the table occupation. And here is a reference to parameters because Microsoft Access supports parameters in data manipulation statements. And if Access sees this word cell that it does not understand because it's not a column name or table name, then it assumes that it is a parameter and there is no parameter definition and parameter value. And so this execution of this statement will fail. Now I register a new worker. I execute this statement. It succeeds. If I try to execute this statement here, then execution of this statement fails because this data that I tried to add to the database, this data violates referential integrity. Now I see that I have written this address incorrectly, so I delete data from the table worker. Delete from worker, I delete all the rows from a table worker. It succeeds, and now I fix these addresses here, and I can execute the statement again, and in this way correct data was added to the database. Now here I have a little bit more complicated select statement that contains joining data from two tables, and also grouping and sorting. And as you can see, execution of this query succeeds, and it gives me this result. So for each occupation that has at least one associated worker, I will find the number of workers who have this occupation. Now here I have another statement. And this statement is actually, first of all, it is syntactically incorrect because it does not contain group by clause. But in addition to syntactical incorrectness, it also has some additional problems that actually cause incorrect result and also complicate query and the further management of a query. So if I try to execute the query here, I will get an error. This is a syntax error, and the reason is that it does not contain group by statement. And now I want to point out that this program here, in addition to that you can execute SQL statements, this program is also able to actually check your SQL statements in terms of quite a large number of different problems. So in order to check the code in terms of problems, I have to select from here plugins, npppdb, and analyze SQL. Or I can use Shift F9 shortcut key. And as you can see here, I have now some warnings in case of this select state. First of all, the first warning states that I'm calculating aggregate values without grouping. So I will fix the problem here. So I add here group by, and I add this reference to these columns to a group by clause. And if I execute the statement, then now the execution succeeds because this code here, it is syntactically correct. However, there is a mistake in the query result because according to the query result, there is also one accountant in the database. However, there is only one worker. This worker is manager, and there are no accountants. So the number here should be 0, not 1. And the reason is that I have here this count with star, and I use here auto-churn. So I have here this warning, count function together with auto-churn counts elements incorrectly. So in order to correct the count elements correctly, I should have here a reference to the mandatory column in the table worker occupation code. And now after making this change here, now the result is correct. I have here is 0. And the one warning here is that sorting rules based on column ordinal position. So I refer here to a column by using its ordinal position, the sequence number. However, it means that if I change the select clause, if I change the order of columns in the select clause, I also have to change the order of the clause, or otherwise the result would be incorrect. So there is this kind of unnecessary dependency between select clause and order by clause. So instead of referencing the column by using the ordinal position, I should reference to the column by other means. In Access, I cannot use alias here, but I can write like that. And now the code also works. And if I re-execute this analysis functionality when I see that now all the errors have been cleared, or all the warnings have been cleared, and there are no warnings about the state. Here I also have some warnings. So the first warning is that I'm joining two tables, but in the select clause I write like that, so I reference to all the columns from both these tables. So if I execute the statement here, when the result is like that, and most probably the result contains columns that are not needed. This is actually a typical mistake in case of writing queries or writing queries that are executed from applications that you use with select star, and you get such data also that you do not need. And if you look here, when in the query result, occupation code is duplicated. So I have two columns that contain occupation code. I clearly do not need such duplicate columns in the query result. So I should think what are exactly the columns that I would like to get as a result of this query. Another warning is that I have here this like predicate, but the pattern here does not contain wildcards. So percentage sign would mean 0 or more symbols, and underscore bit symbol here would mean exactly one symbol. So I should think where I want to add such wildcard symbols here, or instead I would have to use this exact comparison, that the name equals manager. So for instance, if I write like that, now I get data only from table worker, not from a table occupation. And as you can see now, if I execute this error checking, then it does not give any errors. Now I show you that here you can actually disconnect and you can drop these connections that you have here. And one more thing that I would like to demonstrate is that if you have such long script that you perhaps got when you generated SQL statements from Enterprise Architect, then you can also execute this script in your Access database by using this tool. So I define new connection. I create an empty database. I create database rooms. And okay. Now I want to point out that actually there is one shortcoming in this tool. And the shortcoming is that if you have this reference to the decimal data type, then having a specification of a precision and scale here is not supported. So before I execute these statements, I have to remove this definition from here, or otherwise this statement would not be executed for this tool. There is no other reference to data type decimal, and now Control A selects all the statements. And if I click F9, then as you can see, it tells me that all the statements have been executed successfully. So of course, I made sure before I executed the script that this script actually works. In your case, of course, it could be that there is some error in some of the statements, or these statements are in unsuitable order. However, if everything is fine, then you can execute this script directly in your database. And if I now open this Access database here, and I see that all the tables have been created, and all the foreign key constraints have also been defined. So this is a tool that you can use in order to execute SQL statements against Access database, and also check these SQL statements in terms of quite large number of possible problems.